Welcome back to Building Foundations, the podcast by DGI Waterproofing. I'm your host, and we're going to pick up where we left off last time, talking about cracks in your basement floor, remember. We talked about how those cracks can be a sign of bigger problems.
Yeah.
And how those problems, well, sometimes can be pretty serious.
That's right. And one of the things that we see a lot here at DGI is flooding.
Yeah.
It's a pretty common problem in the GTA, and it can cause a lot of damage if it's not addressed properly.
Yeah, flooding's definitely something that we hear about a lot from homeowners. And I think a lot of people, they assume that if they don't live right on a lake or a river, they're not really at risk. But the reality is that flooding can happen anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And it's becoming more common with all the crazy weather patterns we've been seeing lately.
You're absolutely right.
But we've seen an uptick in calls
in recent years, for sure. And it's not just limited to, those low-lying areas anymore. We're seeing it in neighborhoods that haven't really flooded before.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that we wanted to dedicate this episode to.
Okay, so let's get into it then. We have a blog post here.
Okay.
That highlights some of the GTA hotspots.
Okay.
For flooding, and it's a pretty long list.
Yeah.
We have Ajax, Toronto, Mississauga, Brampton, Vaughan, Oakville, Burlington, Markham, Newmarket, Hamilton. That's pretty much the whole region.
It really is. And when you look at that list, it might seem kind of random, but there are actually some pretty clear patterns there and some reasons why these areas are more prone to flooding than others.
Yeah.
For example, a lot of the cities are located right on Lake Ontario, like you mentioned, Ajax, Mississauga, Oakville, and Burlington. So naturally, they're more susceptible to rising lake levels, especially during storms or heavy rainfall.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you're right next to a massive body of water, you're going to be impacted when that water level rises.
Exactly. And then you have some other cities that are kind of intersected by rivers and creeks, like Brampton, Vaughan.
Yeah.
Those waterways, they're beautiful, but they also increase that risk of flooding during heavy rainfall or spring snowmelt.
Right. And then there's Toronto itself, which is a densely populated city with a lot of older infrastructure. So I imagine that plays a role too.
You're absolutely right. Older sewer systems, especially in areas that have seen a lot of development, can get overwhelmed during heavy rainfall.
Yeah.
And that can lead to backups and flooding.
Yeah.
For sure.
So it's a combination of geography, aging infrastructure.
Yeah.
I'm guessing urbanization probably plays a role too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you cover vast areas of land with concrete, asphalt, roads, buildings, parking lots, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
We essentially prevent water from soaking into the ground.
Right.
Naturally.
Yeah. It's like we're creating these giant impermeable surfaces.
Exactly. And that means all that water has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Except to run off into storm drains.
Yeah.
Which can easily get overwhelmed and lead to flooding.
Okay. So we've talked about why certain areas are more prone to flooding.
Yeah.
But let's dig into the actual causes of flooding.
Okay.
The blog post mentions a whole bunch of factors ranging from natural events to human activities. It's not just about heavy rain.
No, it's much more complex than that.
Yeah.
Heavy rainfall definitely is a major factor. But even things like spring snowmelt can be a problem. When temperatures rise quickly, all that accumulated snow melts rapidly. And that sudden surge of water, it can overwhelm drainage systems.
And considering how much snow we get here in the GTA, I can see how that would be a problem.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
But then you also have factors that are directly tied to human activity, like urbanization, which we just talked about.
Yeah.
The more we pave over natural landscapes, the more we disrupt the natural water cycle.
Right.
And increase that risk of flooding.
So it's not just about where you live, it's about how we develop and manage our land.
Exactly. We need to be more mindful of the impact our actions are having on the environment.
Right.
Especially when it comes to water management.
Okay, so this is where I want to shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And talk about solutions.
Okay.
Because it's great to understand the problem, but what can homeowners actually do to protect themselves from flooding?
Right.
The blog post thankfully offers some pretty practical advice.
Yeah.
And one of the key things that it highlights is, you guessed it, basement waterproofing.
You bet. That's what we're all about here at DGI. Yeah. We've seen firsthand how effective basement waterproofing can be in preventing water damage. It's really the foundation of protecting your home from flooding, pun intended.
All right, so let's break down these basement waterproofing techniques because the blog mentions a few different approaches.
Okay.
Foundation crack repair, waterproof membranes, and sump pumps. Can you kind of walk us through how each of these work?
Sure. Let's start with foundation crack repair.
Okay.
Over time, small cracks can develop in your foundation walls.
Right.
And those cracks might seem insignificant, but they can become entry points for water.
Yeah.
Especially during heavy rain.
Right.
So sealing those cracks is crucial.
It's like plugging the holes in a leaky boat.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
By injecting a sealant into those cracks, we create a barrier that prevents water from seeping through.
Okay, that makes sense. What about waterproof membranes? What are those exactly?
Think of those as a protective shield for your foundation walls. They're essentially thick waterproof sheets that are applied to the exterior of your foundation, creating a continuous barrier against moisture.
So even if water does accumulate around your foundation, the membrane's going to prevent it from seeping through the wall.
Exactly. It's a highly effective way to keep your basement dry, especially if you live in an area with the high water table or if you get frequent heavy rainfall.
Got it. And then we have sump pumps. These seem like the heavy hitters.
They are.
Of basement waterproofing.
A sump pump is essentially a workhorse.
Okay.
That actively removes water from your basement.
Okay.
It sits in a specially constructed pit called a sump pit, which is the lowest point in your basement floor.
Okay.
And as water seeps in, it collects in the pit. And once it reaches a certain level, the sump pump kicks on and pumps the water away from your home through a discharge pipe.
So it's like a mini drainage system.
Exactly.
Specifically for your basement.
Sump pumps are particularly beneficial for homeowners that have finished basements because they provide an extra layer of protection against water damage.
Right. Now, the blog post also mentions French drains. Can you give us the lowdown on those, what they are, and why they're so effective?
Sure. A French drain is a system for redirecting water away from your home's foundation.
Okay.
It's essentially a trench filled with gravel that contains a perforated pipe.
Okay.
And the pipe is designed to collect water from the surrounding soil and channel it away from your house.
So it's like creating a path of least resistance for the water to follow instead of towards it.
Got it. It's all about manipulating the flow of water.
Okay.
That trench is typically dug around the perimeter of your home where water is most likely to accumulate.
Right.
And that perforated pipe allows water to enter the system and then be carried away to a safe discharge point.
Okay. And I imagine French drains are particularly effective in areas that have like heavy clay soil, which doesn't drain well naturally.
You're right. Clay soil can become easily saturated, leading to water pooling around your foundation.
Right.
A French drain helps to alleviate that problem by providing an alternate route for water to escape.
Yeah. So aside from those major waterproofing solutions, the blog also lists a few other tips that homeowners can use to kind of protect their homes from flooding. Things like proper grading, keeping your gutters and downspouts clean, and installing window wells around basement windows.
Yeah.
I feel like those are things that people sometimes overlook.
They are, but those little things, they can make a big difference.
Yeah.
Proper grading, for example, ensures that water flows away from your home rather than towards it.
Yeah.
It's all about making sure the ground slopes away from your foundation.
Right, because if the ground's sloping towards your house, you're basically inviting the water to pool up against your foundation.
Exactly.
Which is,
And that's a recipe for disaster. We see that all the time here at DGI. Homeowners who have neglected their grading and end up with water in their basements.
So what about those gutters and downspouts? Those always seem to get clogged with leaves, debris.
They do. And that's why it's so important to keep them clean.
Right.
Gutters and downspouts, they're designed to direct rainwater away from your home. But if they're clogged, that water can overflow and cascade down the side of your house, potentially seeping into your foundation.
It's amazing how much damage those clogged gutters can cause.
Yeah.
We've definitely seen our share of those cases, too.
We have. It's one of those things that's easy to forget about.
Yeah.
But it can really come back to bite you if you're not careful.
Right.
So make it a habit to clean those gutters at least twice a year.
Okay.
spring and fall. And while you're at it, check your downspouts, make sure they're securely attached, and that they're directing water away from your foundation.
Good point. Now, what about those window wells?
Yeah.
They're those little excavated areas around basement windows, right?
That's right. They're meant to let light into your basement, but they can also be entry points for water if they're not properly constructed or maintained.
So how do we make sure that our window wells are doing their job and keeping the water out?
First of all, make sure they're properly constructed with a layer of gravel at the bottom for drainage. And second, make sure they have those plastic covers that help prevent debris from clogging the well. And keep out rainwater. Make sure those covers are in good condition and that they're properly secured.
Okay, so we've covered grading, gutters, window wells. What about those lesser-known strategies that homeowners should be aware of?
Yeah.
The blog mentions backwater valves.
Okay.
What are those exactly?
Backwater valves are one-way valves that are installed in your sewer line. And they're designed to prevent sewage from backing up into your home during heavy rain or sewer backups.
That sounds like a pretty essential thing to have.
Yeah.
Especially in older homes.
Especially in older homes, yeah.
You know, we've seen some pretty nasty sewage backups over the years.
You're telling me sewage backups are a nightmare.
Yeah.
And a backwater valve can really give you peace of mind, knowing that even if the sewer system is overwhelmed, your home is protected.
Okay, backwater valves on the list. Anything else?
Here's one that a lot of people don't realize.
Okay.
You need to disconnect your downspouts from your home's weeping tile system.
Okay. Weeping tile?
Yeah.
What's that?
It's basically a drainage system that runs around the perimeter of your foundation.
Okay.
And it's designed to collect groundwater and channel it away from your home.
Okay.
But sometimes downspouts are mistakenly connected to this system, which can overload it and lead to water problems.
So it's about keeping those two systems separate.
Okay.
By disconnecting your downspouts, you ensure that rainwater is directed away from your foundation. And it doesn't put any extra strain on your weeping tile system.
Yeah.
It's a simple thing.
Yeah.
But it can make a big difference.
You know, it's funny. We're talking about all these different systems, components.
Yeah.
And it makes me realize that a lot of homeowners probably don't even know like how their home's drainage system works.
That's true. And that's why it's so important to educate yourself.
Yeah.
About your home.
Right.
And take a proactive approach to maintenance.
Absolutely. A little knowledge can go a long way in preventing those problems.
For sure.
Speaking of knowledge,
I
wanted to touch on something you mentioned earlier about getting a professional assessment of your basement's waterproofing needs.
Right.
What does that involve?
Well, here at DGI, we offer free consultations.
Okay.
One of our experienced technicians will come to your home, conduct a thorough inspection of your basement and the surrounding area.
Okay.
And they'll look for any signs of water damage, cracks in the foundation. They'll assess the grading and drainage around your home.
So it's like a detective coming in and investigating.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Our technicians, they're trained to spot things that a homeowner might not even notice.
Right.
And based on that assessment, they can recommend a waterproofing plan.
Okay.
That's tailored to your specific needs and budget.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Not at all. Every home is different, and every homeowner has different priorities. So we want to make sure that we're providing the best solution for each individual situation.
That makes a lot of sense. You know, we've been talking a lot about prevention.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to emphasize that investing in flood prevention is really an investment in your home's value and your peace of mind.
I couldn't agree more. It's much better to be proactive and address those potential problems before they turn into major disasters. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground on flood prevention strategies.
We have.
From basement waterproofing and proper grading to gutter maintenance and even backwater valves.
Yeah.
We've given our listeners a lot to think about.
We have. And if there's one takeaway I hope our listeners get from this episode, it's that they don't have to face this alone.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. We're here at DGI to help you every step of the way.
We are.
But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to sump pumps for a moment.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier they're the heavy hitters of basement waterproofing. And I'm just wondering if you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. Sump pumps are really your last line of defense against water intrusion.
Okay.
They work around the clock to keep your basement dry. even during heavy rain or snowmelt.
Okay.
If water does manage to find its way into your basement, the sump pump is there to pump it out.
This is like having a dedicated bodyguard.
Exactly. Always on the lookout for trouble.
Okay, I'm sold on sump pumps.
Yeah.
But what should homeowners know about choosing and maintaining a sump pump?
Well, the first thing is to make sure you choose a sump pump that's the right size for your home.
Okay.
A pump that's too small won't be able to handle a large volume of water.
Mm-hmm.
And a pump that's too large will cycle on and off too frequently.
Right.
Which can shorten its lifespan.
So it's about finding that Goldilocks zone.
Exactly. And that's where our expertise comes in. Mm-hmm. We can help you select the right sump pump for your home.
Mm-hmm.
Taking into account, the size of your basement, the amount of rainfall in your area, the height. The water needs to be pumped.
Okay, so choosing the right pump is important?
Right.
What about maintenance?
Yeah.
What are some of the essential tips for sump pump maintenance?
Regular maintenance is key to making sure your sump pump is always working properly.
Okay, let's hear those tips.
First, you want to test your sump pump regularly. Mm-hmm. You can do this by pouring a bucket of water into the sump pit. Make sure the pump activates and pumps the water out. Second, keep the sump pit clean, free of debris.
Right.
This will prevent clogs and ensure the pump can operate efficiently. Third, check the discharge pipe regularly. Okay. Make sure it's clear, that water is flowing freely. Mm-hmm. And finally, consider having your sump pump professionally serviced once a year.
Okay.
This will help prevent any major problems.
Right.
Ensure that your pump is always ready for action.
Those are all great tips, and I think it highlights how important it is to be proactive.
Right.
When it comes to home maintenance.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to things like sump pumps.
Right.
That are essential for protecting your home from water damage.
Absolutely. A well-maintained sump pump can provide years of reliable service. Mm-hmm. Keep your basement dry and your home protected.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this episode.
Yeah.
From the causes of flooding, the importance of prevention, to the specific strategies homeowners can use to protect their homes. I'm feeling a lot more knowledgeable about this now.
Me too.
I hope our listeners are too.
And even if you haven't experienced flooding yet, it's always a good idea to be prepared.
Yeah.
So, take a walk around your property, assess your current flood prevention measures, and don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns.
That's great advice. But before we wrap up this episode,
okay,
I want to shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And talk about what to do. If, despite your best efforts, your home does experience flooding.
Right.
It's not something anyone wants to think about, but it's important to be prepared.
You're absolutely right.
Just in case.
It's one thing to talk about prevention, but it's also important to know what to do in an emergency.
Right.
So let's walk through those steps that homeowners should take if they find themselves dealing with a flooded basement.
So let's talk about what to do if you discover your basement is flooded. Like, what's the first thing? What's the first thing people should do?
The absolute first thing, you got to make sure it's safe.
Yeah.
Safe to even enter the area.
Right.
Flooding can create a lot of hazards.
Yeah.
Especially electrical ones.
Right. And we talked about shutting off utilities if possible. But what if, the electrical panel is in the flooded basement?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. In that case, it's best to call a licensed electrician.
Yeah.
They have the training and the equipment to handle that safely. And remember, never step into water if you're not sure whether the power's off.
Safety first.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say it's safe to enter the basement. What next?
Grab your phone or a camera. Start documenting everything. Take photos, videos, whatever you can of the water levels, any damage to your belongings, any structural issues you see. This documentation is going to be so important for insurance purposes.
So it's like gathering evidence.
Exactly.
For your insurance claim.
The more detailed your documentation is, the smoother that claims process will be. And be sure to call your insurance company AAIC to report the flood.
Okay, so safety first, then document everything. Call your insurance company. What about the actual cleanup?
Yeah.
Can homeowners start tackling that themselves?
It's tempting to want to start cleaning up right away.
Yeah.
But I'd advise against doing anything major until the insurance adjusters had a chance to see the damage.
Right.
They need to assess the situation for your claim.
So it's more of a waiting game at that point.
To some extent, yes.
Yeah.
But you can take some small steps to prevent any further damage. If it's safe to do so, you can start removing standing water with a shop vac or a pump. You can also move any belongings that haven't been damaged to a dry area.
Okay, so small steps to mitigate further damage.
Right.
But the big cleanup comes later.
Right. And that's where DGI waterproofing can really help.
Okay.
Once that insurance assessment's done, we can come in and handle all aspects of the restoration process.
Now, we've mentioned DGI's expertise in this area, but can you break down what that restoration process actually involves?
Sure. Our team will remove any remaining water, thoroughly dry out your basement using professional equipment, will repair any structural damage, and address any mold growth.
Mold is a big concern after flooding, isn't it?
It is. It's one of the biggest risks.
Yeah.
Mold can start growing incredibly fast in damp conditions, and it can be dangerous to your health.
Yeah.
That's why it's essential to address it quickly and effectively.
So what's involved in, like, professional mold remediation? Is it more than just, like, wiping things down with bleach?
It's much more involved than that.
Yeah.
We identify the source of the mold,
Okay.
contain the affected areas, and then use specialized equipment and techniques to safely remove the mold. And we also take steps to prevent future mold growth.
So it's a multifaceted approach.
It is.
That requires specific expertise.
Yes.
It's not really a DIY project, is it?
Definitely not. Attempting to handle mold removal yourself can be ineffective and even risky.
Yeah.
It's always best to leave it to the pros.
Okay, so we've covered the immediate steps after a flood. Safety, documentation, contact your insurance, and calling in professionals like DGI for cleanup and mold remediation. What comes next?
Well, once the initial cleanup is done, we need to address any underlying issues that might have contributed to the flood in the first place.
Right.
This could involve repairing foundation cracks, improving grading and drainage around your house, or even upgrading your sump pump system.
So it's about learning from the experience.
Exactly.
And preventing future floods.
By addressing those root causes, you can significantly reduce the risk of future flooding.
Right.
And protect your home from further damage.
And this is where that professional assessment from DGI can be so valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll thoroughly inspect your property, identify any vulnerabilities, and recommend a customized plan to address those issues and make your home more resistant to flooding.
So it's a holistic approach to both flood recovery and long-term prevention.
That's right. We're here to support homeowners through every stage, from the initial shock of a flood to the steps they can take to rebuild and protect their homes.
I think we've covered a lot of ground in this episode, from understanding the causes of flooding and the importance of prevention to knowing what to do if your home does flood. It's been a really informative conversation.
It has, and I want to emphasize that even though flooding can be a really stressful experience, homeowners don't have to face it alone. We here at DGI Waterproofing are here to help every step of the way.
That's reassuring to hear. So to wrap up, what's the one key message you want our listeners to take away from this episode?
I'd say the key takeaway is, be proactive. Don't wait for a flood to happen before you start thinking about prevention. Take some time to assess your property, consider the steps we've discussed, and don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions or need assistance. We're here to help you protect your home and your peace of mind.
Great advice. And that's it for this episode of Building Foundations. We hope you found this deep dive into flood prevention and recovery helpful. And as always, if you have any questions or need assistance, don't hesitate to contact DGI Waterproofing. We're here to help.
Until next time, stay safe and dry.